If you're a high performer, you live in a world that's just defined by volatility, right? The deadlines, they often feel impossible. Unexpected setbacks are, they're basically guaranteed. And criticism, whether it's public scrutiny or just your own internal doubt, that feels like a daily constant.
It's the air you breathe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do you find that source of unshakable strength? How do you build an internal operating system that doesn't rely on external successes, but on this unyielding, resilient core that you build entirely yourself?
Well, that's really the most critical question of self-mastery, isn't it? We spend so much time optimizing our external environment, our careers, our finances, our schedules.
Everything.
And yet, we often leave the most vital environment, our own mind, completely exposed to every single external storm.
Yes. And that is the mission of this deep dive. We're taking a really fascinating look at this ancient philosophical concept of the inner citadel. It's a metaphor for the mind, yes, but we're treating it as a strategic, customized mental operating system.
An OS, I like that.
Yeah, an OS designed specifically to cultivate resilience, emotional control, and an unbreakable mental foundation for, the modern person under pressure.
And our sources today, they draw very deeply on the core texts of Stoicism. You have Epictetus, who is so focused on freedom, and then Marcus Aurelius, who is focused on governance.
Two very different perspectives.
Very. And we're going to connect those timeless strategies directly to some contemporary psychological concepts, including anti-fragility. The goal is to synthesize these ideas into profoundly actionable knowledge for you, the listener, who wants to be not just successful, but fundamentally sturdy against the chaos of life.
And to make this system easy to implement, we've broken it down into 3 necessary components. They're almost like layers of a strategy. First, there's the architectural foundation, which is really about radical honesty about what is truly yours to control. Second, the core tool, which is the discipline of assent. That's the gateway to mastering emotional impulses.
The tactical part.
Exactly. And finally, the growth engine. This is the principle of anti-fragility, which ensures that you can transform adversity into strength.
And I'm here to help navigate that synthesis, connecting the philosophical rigor of these ancient ideas to the practical, sometimes messy reality of applying them day to day when the pressure is really on.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the architecture of the citadel itself. How do we even begin to define and bird this mental fortress?
The inner citadel is, at its heart, a really powerful metaphor for psychological sovereignty. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, he described it beautifully. He called it the stronghold of our spirit.
A stronghold.
Right. And it's not a retreat from the world, which is a common misconception. It's a dedicated place of calm observation and intentional thought from which you engage with the world strategically.
I think the most powerful line from the source material is where he suggests that nowhere you can go, no physical vacation, no secluded house is more peaceful, more free from interruptions than your own soul. That makes the citadel a necessary sanctuary, but also something you have to actively cultivate. It doesn't just appear.
That's the key right there. It is an active sanctuary. It is built not of stone, but of boundaries. And the blueprint for those boundaries, that comes from Epictetus.
Right.
His experience, being born a slave and eventually becoming one of the most insightful philosophical teachers of the age, that gave him a unique authority on true freedom and control.
Yeah, Epictetus knew the literal definition of having your body, your career, and your life entirely controlled by external forces.
Yeah.
He wasn't speaking metaphorically.
Precisely. And so Epictetus laid the cornerstone with what we call the dichotomy of control. He forced his students to identify, amidst all the churning chaos of existence, what is the one thing that no external force, no tyrant, no tragedy, no market crash can truly take away from you.
And the radical answer, which I think is often dismissed because it sounds too simple, is that the only thing truly ours is our own mind. Our judgments, our choices, our opinions, and crucially, our reactions. This is the definition of our absolute non-negotiable sovereignty.
And by definition, this starkly contrasts with everything else. Everything. The outcomes of your efforts, the behavior and opinions of other people, the political climate, the economy.
Your reputation.
Your reputation, external events, all of it lies outside our true possession. If you base your well-being on controlling that external sphere, you are guaranteeing misery.
Okay, I have to push back on that slightly. Because for a high performer, it can feel a little dismissive to say, just don't worry about the outcome.
Right.
We are measured by outcomes. That's the job. So how does this philosophy reconcile the necessity of achieving external goals with this mandate to only focus inward. Doesn't focusing only on effort become a form of, I don't know, emotional repression or just denial of reality?
That's a crucial distinction, and we have to make it really clear. The Stoic distinction is not between caring about external results and not caring. Of course you care about your career and your family. That's human. The distinction is between what you are justified in feeling indignant about and what you are merely expected to work on. You are required to give your best effort. That is within your control. The ultimate outcome is not.
So anxiety, according to Epictetus, stems directly from trying to seize control of things that fundamentally do not belong to us.
Exactly.
We're just exhausting ourselves trying to manage the external instead of fortifying the internal.
Exactly. Psychological resilience is not about shrugging off problems. It is the direct result of reining in our attention and effort and directing them inward toward the things we truly own: our integrity, our preparation, and our response.
Okay, let's make this concrete with that workplace stress example. Let's say a high-stakes project manager gets hit with a seemingly impossible deadline from a client or an executive, let's say a week shaved off a critical deliverable.
Right, a classic scenario. The common non-stoic reaction immediately focuses outside the circle of control. The internal monologue is something like, "This is unfair, they are sabotaging us, we are doomed to fail, and I will be blamed."
And that's where the indignation, fear, and helplessness take root.
Yes. You are wasting precious energy on outcomes and perceived malice that you can do nothing about.
So the Inner Citadel approach, which is grounded in this dichotomy of control, shifts that focus entirely. You can't magically add a week back to the calendar. That's outside the fortress.
But you can control your subsequent actions and your internal state. You focus on the internal properties. I cannot change the deadline, but I can control how I allocate resources. I can control my communication with the team about risk mitigation, and I can control my own composure in this crisis.
The question shifts.
The response shifts from how do I change the situation, which is impossible, to how do I uphold my values and maximize my effort given these constraints. You focus on what the Stoics called prohairesis, your fundamental moral and rational faculty, your power of choice.
That reframes the entire scenario. The pain isn't caused by the deadline itself. It's caused by the assumption that the deadline must conform to your preferences.
Exactly. Marcus Aurelius realized this so deeply when he wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it."
Your estimate of it.
The event is neutral data. The deadline is X. The suffering comes from the subjective estimate. This deadline means I am inadequate, or I will fail, or I will be miserable. The fortress is the structure that allows you to see the difference between those two things.
So the practicality of the metaphor, then, is that the mind stands guard at the gate. The world is constantly assaulting us with countless impressions, critical people, bad news, temptations, and we have to actively decide what we admit into the fortress and what we just leave outside.
It's a base of operations, yes. The walls of the citadel are built by constantly reinforcing that boundary. What is mine to command, my judgments and efforts, and what is not everyone else's choices and all external outcomes.
So if the mind is the stronghold of our spirit, and we're constantly guarding the gates, how do we operate that gate? How do we interrupt the lightning-fast impressions that rush in and try to take root?
Now we're getting to the mechanics.
That brings us directly to the most vital, practical tool in the Stoic operating system, the Discipline of Assent.
Yes. This is where it gets really tactical.
The Discipline of Assent is where philosophy meets high-stakes psychology. Assent is simply the act of giving your mental seal of approval to an impression or a thought. If a thought flashes through your mind and you mentally nod and say, yes, this is true, you have granted assent.
And the Discipline of Assent is the systemic daily practice of examining those initial impressions before you grant them that seal of approval. The Stoics understood that we do not suffer from the events themselves, but from the belief we hold about the events.
The entire power of this discipline, the entire pathway to emotional control, lies in what we call the critical gap.
The gap, yeah.
This is the pause, however brief it might be, between the initial impression, the perceived insult, the sudden panic, the rush of envy, and the subsequent, often destructive reaction.
Think of your mind as a rapidly flowing stream of data. Without the Discipline of Assent, we automatically, subconsciously agree with every single piece of data that surfaces.
Which is a terrifying thought.
It is. Your mind is receiving a torrent of judgments, emotional urges, and biased narratives every single day. If you don't actively pause and question them, you are merely a servant to every impulse that arises.
And this is where the speed of modern life makes us so vulnerable. We are encouraged to react instantly to notifications, to news cycles, to aggressive emails. We are practicing the exact opposite of the critical gap.
We are. The challenge is that these initial impressions, they often arrive cloaked in strong emotion. The source material illustrated this really well with Maya's story. Maya receives a piece of stinging, perhaps unfair, criticism on a project.
Okay.
The immediate thought that flashes into her consciousness is, I'm not good enough.
That thought, I'm not good enough, that's the initial impression. If Maya immediately grants assent, that thought spirals into a wave of shame, defensiveness, withdrawal. The result is emotional paralysis.
But the act of choosing not to agree with that narrative, of suspending judgment and inspecting it, that is the act of discipline of assent. You are refusing to give your mental stamp of authenticity to a narrative that is likely destructive, biased, or just plain untrue.
You're challenging your internal editor before it publishes the emotional response.
Beautifully put, yes. And this requires consciously, and sometimes ruthlessly, separating the neutral external event from the subjective internal interpretation. This is the absolute cornerstone of psychological stability.
Let's break that down even more.
Okay, let's analyze that distinction further. The neutral event, the critical feedback, the delayed flight, the colleague's dismissive tone is objective, plain data. It is factual, you can't really argue with it.
But the moment that data hits our consciousness, our minds, which are basically narrative-spinning machines powered by our past experiences and insecurities, instantly weave the subjective narrative.
Exactly.
It's the immediate interpretation. I am being attacked. This proves I'm inadequate. I am unlucky.
And those interpretations, not the objective events, are the direct and sole cause of our emotional turmoil. The person paralyzed by anxiety during a market downturn isn't stressed by the abstract movement of numbers on a screen.
Right.
They are stressed by the narrative they've attached to it. My security is gone. I failed to plan. I will never recover. The discipline of assent teaches you to intercept that narrative and replace it with a true assessment of the facts.
So when our listeners feel that jolt of irritation or panic or upset, the core application of assent is to stop and ask, what story am I telling myself about this event right now?
Yes.
And the crucial follow-up question is, what objective evidence do I have that this story is 100% true and not just an impulsive judgment?
This creates accountability for your own feelings. You are holding your own emotional interpretation up to the cold light of reason, checking the facts before you sign the emotional contract that will determine your behavior.
But since these impressions move so incredibly fast, we need concrete methods to physically and mentally create that pause. Let's get into the practical techniques from the sources for actively interrupting the impulse before granting assent.
Okay, Liz. We can start with the most reliable physiological anchor we have, intentional breathing. When a trigger occurs, your amygdala, your brain's alarm center fires, preparing the body for fight or flight.
The adrenaline rush.
Exactly. Slower, deliberate breathing is the single most effective way to signal to your nervous system that the threat is not immediate, that you have time.
And the source material specifies a powerful technique, the 4-2-6 count. So that's inhaling slowly for 4 counts, holding the breath briefly for 2, and then a long controlled exhale for 6 counts.
Right. And the reason this works, and this is the deep dive mechanism here, is twofold. First, the conscious act of counting forces a cognitive shift away from the thought spiral. You cannot simultaneously panic about the narrative in your head and focus on counting your breath. It's just not possible.
You're redirecting your attention.
You are. And second, the extended exhale actively stimulates the vagus nerve, which runs from the brainstem down to the abdomen. The vagus nerve is the key pathway for your parasympathetic nervous system activation, the rest and digest mode.
So you're manually flipping a switch in your body.
You're manually engaging the system that tells your body, we are safe, we have time to think. This creates that critical gap we were talking about.
That moves it way beyond a simple coping mechanism. It's a physiological intervention designed to restore the rational mind. Another excellent technique is purely behavioral, counting before responding.
This is deceptive in its simplicity, but it's so powerful in practice, especially in high-tension interpersonal situations.
Oh, absolutely.
When you receive sharp criticism or a hostile email or you're in a difficult negotiation, the immediate instinctual reply is often defensive and reactive.
And almost always counterproductive.
Always. Counting backward from 5 to 1 or even 10 to 1 before you speak or click send, it just creates this necessary mental distance.
It allows that initial wave of emotion to crest and then dissipate before you're forced to engage. The example of the teacher dealing with an angry parent is perfect. If the teacher reacts defensively to the parent's accusation, the conflict just escalates. But counting allows the teacher's rational, professional persona to step back into the driver's seat.
And finally, a technique that leverages the interaction itself, asking clarifying questions. This buys you time, but only if the question is genuinely inquisitive and non-defensive.
Right. You can't ask it with an attitude.
No. Instead of reacting to an implied slight or an insult, you neutralize the interaction by seeking information, asking something like, can you help me understand the specific point you're making with that comment?
Or what outcome are you hoping for with that recommendation?
Yes. This forces two beneficial shifts. First, it forces the other speaker to slow down and clarify their intent, which often dilutes the emotional heat. And second, and more importantly for your citadel, it forces you out of reactive mode and into listening and information gathering mode.
It interrupts your own spiral.
Exactly, your own spiral toward anger or defensiveness.
So assent gives us the moment-to-moment emotional control to guard our inner citadel, ensuring we don't grant sovereignty to destructive internal impressions. But life is still going to apply stress. Rejections, failures, hardships will breach the outer defenses.
Inevitably.
So how do we ensure that when stress hits the citadel, it doesn't just damage us, but it actually makes us stronger?
Well, now we have to move beyond resilience. We need the system's growth engine, anti-fragility.
Yes.
When we talk about dealing with stress, most people aim for one of two goals, resilience or robustness. A resilient system bounces back to its original state. You take a hit, you recover fully. A robust system resists damage. It's built so strong that the hit doesn't penetrate, like a concrete bunker.
But Nassim Nicholas Taleb's concept of anti-fragility describes a third, far more powerful state.
Far more powerful. It is the quality of systems that improve and become stronger, better, or more capable because of exposure to volatility, stress, disorder, and mistakes.
So the obstacle isn't just something to be endured.
Not at all. It becomes essential fuel. The system needs difficulty to flourish, just like bones need stress to strengthen or muscles need resistance to grow. If your mind operates on anti-fragility, the only way to genuinely hurt it is to protect it from stress.
And this modern idea aligns so perfectly with the deeper mission of Stoicism, which views growth as the sole worthwhile pursuit. Marcus Aurelius crystallized this mindset when he wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way."
I love that quote. It means trouble is not punishment, it's necessary tutoring. It requires the conviction that every barrier, every painful piece of feedback, every frustrating event contains lessons vital for the development of character and expertise.
You have to view the obstacle not as a random misfortune to be avoided,
but as a mandatory weightlifting session that leaves you with greater capacity.
And this is where we can bring in that missing piece from our sources, the philosophical perspective that really facilitates anti-fragility, the concept of amor fati.
Amor fati, literally, love of fate. It's the Nietzschean idea that you should not merely bear what is necessary, nor simply be resilient to it, but you should truly embrace it and love it.
That's a huge mental leap.
It's a radical mental leap. It's not because it's inherently good, but because you recognize that everything that has happened, the mistakes, the rejections, the hardships, is necessary for the person you are becoming.
So it's the ultimate acceptance. It means looking back at your failures and not wishing they hadn't happened because those failures were instrumental in shaping your current competence and internal strength.
Yes. An anti-fragile mind recognizes that volatility is not the exception, it is the rule. And the person who loves fate is empowered by that reality. They approach the next setback not with dread, but with curiosity. What new strength is this adversity demanding that I develop? This mindset turns the obstacle into a catalyst for growth.
Okay, so let's explore the practical tools we can use to activate this anti-fragile growth engine. The first tool specifically prepares the mind for loving fate. Premeditatio malorum.
The premeditation of evils. This is intentionally imagining potential negative outcomes before they occur.
Yeah.
And we must be clear, This is not worrying.
Right, big difference.
Worrying is ruminating endlessly on a potential disaster without developing a plan. Premeditatio malorum is structured, intentional preparation.
The purpose is psychological inoculation. By mentally rehearsing the loss, visualizing losing the job, failing the presentation, facing public criticism, you neutralize the shocking impact of the event if it actually happened.
Exactly. You transform the terror of the unknown into concrete mental preparation for the possible.
So the exercise has to be comprehensive.
It does. You sit and you visualize the worst outcome in painful detail. But the crucial, non-morbid part follows immediately after. You picture the internal resources and core values you would rely on to cope. You ask yourself, if I lost everything external, what remains? My ability to think, my knowledge, my friends, my physical health.
This preemptive mental rehearsal forces you to see that your identity and your competence are not tethered to external circumstance. When the alarm sounds, when the real obstacle arrives, you don't panic because you've already walked that path in your mind.
Yes, you confirm that your inner citadel, your core ability to respond, is independent of the external environment. It converts fear from a paralyzing emotional state into predictable, manageable data points that can inform your preparation.
The second tool, inspired by Seneca's letters, is voluntary discomfort-controlled stress. This is where we deliberately expose ourselves to mild, safe hardships to build psychological flexibility.
It's like strength training for the soul.
It is.
This is so vital because ease makes us brittle. Too much comfort makes us psychologically fragile, prone to dramatic upset when minor inconveniences occur. Seneca would occasionally wear coarse clothing or eat only simple rations or sleep rough just to prove to himself that his happiness was not contingent on luxury.
And for the modern high performer, this might look like taking a cold shower for a minute.
A classic.
Leaving your phone at home for a few hours while running errands, choosing to walk a kilometer instead of driving, or maybe you fasting for a day.
The lesson you gain from these small acts is profound, and it's compounding. They remind you, I am tougher than I thought. I can endure minor deprivation. My well-being is not tethered to convenience.
So when real hardship arrives, a business setback, a travel disaster, your mind has a stored memory of successful endurance.
Exactly. You survive the cold shower, you can survive this tough conversation with a difficult stakeholder.
The third tool involves actively reframing setbacks for triumph. This is the practical application of amor fati, turning every perceived loss into an opportunity for necessary improvement.
This means eliminating the language of victimhood. You have to stop asking, why is this happening to me? And consciously pivot to, what necessary skill or insight can I extract from this event? How might I improve because this went wrong?
Let's take the graduate student example from the sources. Their paper is rejected with blistering, specific comments about their methodology and their argumentation.
A fragile mind focuses on the external criticism, and it spirals into shame and defensive rage.
An anti-fragile mind uses the discipline of assent to separate the neutral event, the comments, the rejection, from the subjective narrative, which is, I'm a failure.
Yes, and they use the dichotomy of control to focus their energy entirely on what they can influence. They treat the sharp criticism as data, as a painful but precisely tailored set of instructions on how to level up their research skills.
They revise, they seek mentorship, and they resubmit, emerging with a genuinely better, stronger paper and skill set than before.
The anti-fragile growth engine ensures that every time life applies stress, you don't just endure it, you emerge with greater capacity than you had before.
So assent and anti-fragility are the emotional control system and the fuel, but this citadel, it needs consistent, intentional, daily maintenance to keep the system operational and prevent any internal rot.
Absolutely. And that brings us to our final section, the two maintenance pillars, virtue and reflection.
If the goal is an unbreakable mind, we need inner security that is truly untouchable. That's why the first maintenance pillar is virtue as inner security.
True security, the kind that underpins an unbreakable mind, can never come from external achievements, your stock portfolio, your job title, or public applause. We've already established those are outside the walls.
Right.
Lasting security comes from consistency with core values, which is the operational definition of integrity. When your actions align perfectly with your principles, you are unshakable.
The Stoics identified 4 cardinal virtues that serve as the benchmarks for this integrity: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. And we shouldn't just give these quick definitions. For the high performer, these are the operating standards of the citadel.
That's a great way to put it. Wisdom is not just intelligence, but it's the application of knowledge and reason to make sound judgments. It's knowing how to prioritize what truly matters and how to avoid self-deception in decision-making. It's strategic clarity.
And courage is facing difficulty with resolve. Crucially, it's not the absence of fear, but the ability to act rightly despite the fear. This is moral strength, the courage to speak truth to power, the courage to stick to the plan when the market panics.
Or the courage to resist temptation, yes. Then there's justice, which is fairness, ethical dealing, and respecting the humanity in others. For a high performer, justice means ensuring your success is not achieved at the necessary expense of others. It is about building structures and teams based on equity and good faith.
And finally, temperance, which is so often misunderstood as merely sobriety, is self-control and moderation in all things. In the modern context, this is critical. It means temperance not just in food or drink, but in information consumption, in emotional reaction speed, and in ambition. It's the ability to say no to the good so you can say yes to the best.
Integrity is simply the process of living out these four virtues, particularly when it is highly inconvenient or costly to do so. Let's look at the example of the manager resisting an unethical shortcut.
That shortcut offers immense external validation, short-term profit, praise from superiors, a perceived win. But it violates justice and wisdom.
The manager resists, choosing loyalty to principle over temporary profit. Their subsequent composure, even when they're facing difficult conversations or the loss of a bonus, doesn't come from anticipating praise. It comes from deep internal alignment. They know they acted rightly.
And that alignment immediately reduces the emotional volatility that's tied to external validation.
Absolutely.
If the manager had taken the shortcut, they would live in constant anxiety, fearing discovery or internal dissonance. By choosing integrity, they eliminate that vulnerability entirely. The Citadel is secure because its foundations are moral.
And the ripple effect is powerful. Aligning your actions with your values builds deep, unshakable self-trust. You know who you are and what you stand for, regardless of the chaos around you. That brings us to the second pillar of maintenance, daily reflection and renewal.
Integrity is forged in action, but it's refined in quiet examination. You can't adjust a system if you don't monitor its performance.
Daily self-reflection is the necessity of seeing behavioral patterns, recognizing emotional triggers, and converting the raw, chaotic experiences of the day into usable, structured insight. Marcus Aurelius practiced this nightly review without fail, using his journal as a tool to hold himself accountable.
Journaling for clarity acts as the crucial tool here. It slows down the frantic pace of your thoughts and forces your internal narratives to become visible and tangible on the page.
Yes, it transforms that nagging anxiety or vague irritation into clear, quantifiable data points that you can actually act upon.
And the sources detail a perfect, structured evening ritual for ongoing progress designed to cover all facets of the inner citadel control, growth, and virtue. It is a three-part exercise inspired by philosophical tradition.
Yes, it is.
The first question is designed to reinforce courage and self-trust. What did I face with courage today? This is about noticing moments when you chose virtue over comfort, even tiny wins, like holding your temper, refusing to gossip, or sticking to a difficult commitment.
The second question is the data collection phase. Where did I fall short, and what does that reveal about my patterns or needs? This is the honest examination. You look at the moments you granted assent to an unhelpful impression, or chose comfort over courage, or where you acted without temperance.
And crucially, you have to treat this information as data.
Exactly. Not as a failure report, but as diagnostic information for future improvement.
And the third question is the forward momentum element, directly feeding the anti-fragile growth engine. How did I take even one step toward becoming the person I want to be? This links the reflection immediately to an intention for the next day, ensuring that every insight leads directly to an adjustment in strategy.
This systematic approach ensures that the entire Inner Citadel operating system remains functional for the long term. Setbacks are treated as essential, painful feedback. You ask, what is the smallest, most specific thing I can adjust or learn from this, and how will I try that differently tomorrow?
Okay, final synthesis time. This system, built on absolute sovereignty over the mind, which is the Citadel foundation, rigorous control through the pause, the discipline of assent, growth achieved through welcoming difficulty or anti-fragility, and clarity through values, virtue and reflection. This equips you to meet life not as a victim constantly trying to avoid circumstances, but as the active, prepared master of your own response.
We've explored the concept of the Inner Citadel as a sophisticated mental operating system for high performers. It teaches you that your power is not external or conditional. It lies solely and securely in the quality of your response to the world.
We highlighted the discipline of assent as the core tool for emotional control, that essential critical pause between impression and reaction, and established anti-fragility, driven by the Stoic mindset and amor fati as a growth engine that ensures you emerge stronger and more capable from every stressor and setback. This is the path to an unbreakable mind, regardless of external turbulence.
True freedom is found in the deep, quiet knowledge that while you cannot command fortune or fate, you can master how you meet every challenge that comes your way. The quality of your life is determined entirely by the quality of your responses.
And if you're looking to put these powerful philosophical concepts and mental strategies into immediate daily practice, the detailed tools, structured growth assessments, and the structured worksheets we discussed today are available to help you start building and maintaining your own Inner Citadel operating system.
You can find these practical resources and additional structured guidance in the book that served as the foundation for this deep dive. Look for the book, The Inner Citadel, Building Unshakable Strength Within, available at tazuba.com and on Amazon KDP by searching for the author, Derrick Sekiziyivu.